This happened about 3 months ago. I was 32 and looking for a steady job after losing my previous position. I joined the nuclear plant security team, hoping the pay would help support my family. The plant felt eerie with its tall cooling towers casting long shadows. I worked the graveyard shift, patrolling alone in the dark. I still think about what I experienced there. It started as just another night. The plant was quiet. I walked the same path over and over. The air felt heavy from the humming machines around me. I checked my watch and glanced down a long corridor. Suddenly, the lights flickered in the control room. I thought it was nothing, maybe a loose wire, but still, it nagged at me. A few weeks went by, and I started to notice more odd things. My radio sometimes crackled with strange noises. I wouldn't say I was scared, but it made me uneasy. Equipment went missing, and I heard sounds echo through the hallways. One night, there was a loud bang from a room I had just passed. I froze, thinking someone was playing tricks, but when I checked, there was no one there. My colleagues joked about ghost stories and odd things. They warned me to stay alert, but I brushed them off. I had a job to do. Each night, I reviewed the security cameras. That's when things got weirder. I saw shadowy figures lurking in corners, only to vanish when I looked closer. I thought my eyes were deceiving me. Maybe I was just tired. One night, the hallways felt almost too silent. I walked under the massive cooling towers, feeling the ground hum below me. My heart raced. I heard a whisper. "Milo," it said. I barely registered it. I shook my head and told myself I was just tired. But then I caught a glimpse in my peripheral vision. A figure stood by a door. I approached slowly. "Hello?" I called out. No response. A cold chill ran down my spine as I stepped closer. My pulse quickened. I thought maybe it was a prank, but when I reached the spot, nobody was there. It felt wrong. The shadows grew deeper, and I questioned my sanity. Then I heard the voice again. "Why did you come here?" It echoed in the stillness. I jerked around, but no one was there. I stumbled back, shaken. Was I really alone? I thought I could hear laughter, but I didn't know if it was coming from me or not. I didn't know what to do. It felt like I was being watched. That night, I finished my shift, but I felt a heaviness in the air. I drove home, and I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Days turned into weeks, and I quit the job. I thought it would make it stop, but even now, 3 months later, I still hear that whisper sometimes. Milo. It haunts me, a reminder of the questions that linger in the dark. What was real? What was just my mind? I'll never know, and that's the scariest part. The trouble didn't end when I quit the job. If anything, it followed me home. I tried to focus on normalcy, to immerse myself in family life. My wife Jenna made dinner while my kids played in the living room. But every time I closed my eyes, I saw the darkness of the plant beckoning me. One night I sat up in bed, drenched in sweat, the same whisper echoing in my mind. Milo. It was a haunting melody that looped through my thoughts until dawn broke. I had to know if it was all in my head. The next day, against my better judgment, I visited the security office at the plant. I told myself it was to retrieve my final paycheck, but deep down, I needed answers. The idea was silly. I expected to feel relief, but instead, a chill gripped my heart as I approached the gates. The plant didn't hold the same terror anymore, but I could still feel its weight. I passed by the cooling towers, and they loomed even larger from this angle. With each step toward the office, the whisper returned, lightly dancing at the edges of my consciousness. Inside, the office was empty. Desks were abandoned, some papers strewn about. I took a deep breath and walked to the security room. After months, the familiar flicker of the monitors greeted me. It felt wrong to sit there. I hesitated, but I had to look. I pulled up the old footage, scrolling through the clips. Just dark hallways and empty corridors.
But then I paused. There it was, a shadow darting across the screen. My heart raced. I had seen it before. This time it was clearer, a figure with no discernible features. I leaned in, squinting at the monitor. It looked as if it was watching me. Suddenly, my radio crackled, and the static stirred the air. "Why did you come here?" The voice was unmistakable. A wave of dread washed over me, and I stumbled back. I wasn't prepared for this. Fumbling with my phone, I called Jenna, but it went straight to voicemail. I was alone. I had to get out. Just as I turned to leave the room, a loud crash echoed from the storage area. My breath hitched. I stepped toward the sound, heart pounding. The door to the storage was slightly ajar. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but curiosity pulled me closer. As I peeked inside, my heart stopped. I saw a flicker of movement, followed by another whisper. This time, softer. "Milo, come and play." I blinked, and suddenly, everything went dark. I was enveloped in an impenetrable blackness. I couldn't see my hand in front of my face. Panic set in, filling the void around me. I fumbled for the door, but I couldn't find it. It was like the shadows were
swallowing me whole. Then, just as quickly, the lights flickered back to life. I was still standing in the storage area, but it was empty. No sounds, no figures, just silence. The only thing left was the tremor of fear that rippled through my body. I staggered out of the room, pushing through the hallway. I knew I needed to leave, but as I reached the exit, something flashed in the corner of my eye. I turned, and there it was, a shadow, bigger than before, looming just down the corridor, staring straight at me. That's when I realized I wasn't alone. I felt a jolt of adrenaline course through me. The shadow loomed closer, a dark silhouette stretching across the floor like an ink stain spreading against the stark tiles. It moved, hovering between the light and the dark, a possible threat I couldn't fully grasp. My instincts screamed for me to run, but my feet felt like concrete. "Milo," it whispered again, the voice luring me into its depths. My rational mind fought to push the panic back. It had to be a figment of my imagination, the memories of the plant's horrors twisting together in my mind. Yet, the feeling of being watched was unmistakable. There was a flicker, and the shadow suddenly jerked, as if startled. It receded into the corridor, yet I felt its pull. Before I could think twice, I took a step forward. The last thing I wanted was to turn back. I wanted to see what was behind the veil of darkness that had haunted me since I left. "Hello?" I called, my voice echoing off the walls, swallowed in the stillness. No response came. I crept further, my breath shallow. The corridor stretched on, and the whisper coiled around me like smoke. Then my phone buzzed in my pocket, sharp against the quiet. I fished it out, praying it was Jenna. But it was a number I didn't recognize, a local number. Sweaty palms pressed against the screen as I answered. "Hello?" I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Static followed, and then I heard that voice again. "Milo, you shouldn't be here." My blood ran cold. "Who is this?" I pressed, but the line went dead. Panic clawed at me. My thoughts raced. This had to be a practical joke, or worse, someone from the plant messing with me. I couldn't stick around to figure it out. The shadow flashed in my peripheral vision, closer now. I didn't hesitate this time. I turned to run, but stumbled against the doorframe, my heart hammering in my chest. I dashed toward the exit, desperate to escape the clutches of the mystery lurking behind me. As I pushed through the door, the fresh air hit my face like a slap. I stumbled to the lot, feeling safe away from that prison, yet dread settled in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling of eyes watching me, even outside the plant's walls. I sprinted to my car. The engine roared to life as I slammed the door shut. My mind raced with questions,
and one in particular gnawed at me. What had I just witnessed back there? That thing, whatever it was, felt almost sentient, like it had been waiting for me. I needed answers. All the clues spun together in my head like a tangled thread, but one thought echoed louder than the rest. I couldn't ignore it anymore. I would have to go back. That evening, I returned home, but the normalcy felt off. Jenna looked up from the couch, but there was something strange in her eyes. "You look pale. What happened?" I opened my mouth to tell her everything, but the moment I met her gaze, I hesitated. I couldn't burden her with my fears. Instead, I lied. Just a long day. Later that night, while the world around me settled into sleep, I pulled out my old notebook from the plant security days. I flipped through it, searching for anything that could explain what I had seen. Scribbled notes about protocol and odd incidents filled the pages. Then my breath caught. There, in the margins, written in my hurried scrawl, was a phrase, "Always watch where shadows fall." I suddenly felt the cold creeping back into my bones. I had just uncovered something new, and it terrified me. Who or what was hiding in those shadows? As a new realization dawned on me, I could only think of one thing. I had to find out. The next morning, I barely managed to get through breakfast. Jenna's casual chatter faded into background noise as I replayed the night before in my mind. I had to return to the plant. I needed to confront that shadow and whatever it was trying to tell me. But a part of me wondered if I was just running toward danger. I had almost finished my coffee when my phone buzzed again. The same unknown number. My heart skipped. I hesitated before answering, my hand shaking against the cool glass of the table. "Hello?" I said, trying to sound steady. "Why are you still there?" the voice asked, strained and urgent. "Who are you?" I snapped back, my patience wearing thin. "What do you want?" "Listen to me closely." The voice thickened with desperation. "Do not go back. The shadows will consume you." I scoffed, my fear fighting against my anger. "You expect me to believe that? I've faced worse." "Not like this, Milo." The line went dead again. I stared at my phone, the weight of dread creeping back. I had already made up my mind, but now it felt like stepping off a high ledge. Yet I couldn't ignore a warning that carried an unsettling familiarity. With shaky breaths, I decided to go anyway. I stuffed my notebook and a flashlight in my bag. Before I left, I glanced at Jenna, still absorbed in her show. The brightness from the screen cast shadows around her without any hint of the darkness I had felt at the plant. I wanted to tell her something, anything, but the words stuck in my throat. When I arrived at the plant, the sun was dipping low, casting long shadows across the parking lot. I hesitated at the entrance, glancing around as if expecting someone to stop me, but no one did. I pushed through the doors, and the stale air wrapped around me like a vice. The corridor stretched on, familiar yet foreboding. I made my way back into the darkness where I'd last seen the shadow. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, and the further I walked, the more the silence pressed in on me. As I reached the junction where I first encountered it, I froze. Everything felt still. The shadows around me shifted subtly, and I felt that sense of being watched creeping back. I flipped on my flashlight, the beam slicing through the dimness. That's when I saw it. A figure loomed at the edge of the light, more defined than I had imagined. It stood there, a dark outline with indistinct features. My breath hitched. The shadow seemed alive, quivering, as if breathing. "Milo," it whispered again, each syllable dripping with a sinister allure. I faltered, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my feet remained glued to the floor. The flickering lights overhead added to the tension, and the air felt electric. There was something in its presence that pulled at me, an echo of familiarity, but also a warning of danger. Suddenly, an alarm blared through the silence, drowning out the shadow's voice.
Red lights began to flash overhead. Adrenaline surged through me. I turned to flee, but before I could escape, the figure stepped into the light, and I recognized it. "Not again," I whispered, panic flooding my veins. "Come back to me," it breathed, its voice edged with a haunting familiarity that twisted with terror in my gut. I couldn't shake the feeling that my past was now clawing its way back into my present. I backed away, my pulse pounding in my ears. Whatever I had thought I was going to discover, I now realized I was in over my head. But what was I really being pulled toward, and what more would I uncover if I set foot into that darkness again? I couldn't breathe. The shadow loomed closer, its features sharpening with an unmistakable familiarity. Panic surged through me like icy water. I had to get out. Just as I turned to run, the floor trembled beneath my feet. I stumbled, barely catching myself against the cold metal wall. The alarms continued to wail, echoing through the empty corridors, but the urgency of that voice gripped me. "Come back to me." Those words clung to the air, twisting my insides. I wanted to deny their pull, to shut the voice out, but it tugged at something deep inside, a memory buried under layers of time. I had to. Glancing back, I saw the shadow shifting, inching closer still. My flashlight flickered, casting a frantic glow. "What do you want from me?" I shouted, my voice hoarse and desperate. "Milo," it intoned, the name reverberating in the silence. The sound was intoxicating, yet terrifying. I shook my head, my heart racing. There was no way I could confront whatever this was. I was here because I felt the need to uncover the truth, but at what cost? Before I could make a decision, the lights above blared brighter, and the shadows stretched and twisted. A sudden beam of white light filled the corridor, temporarily blinding me. I raised my hand instinctively. "Clear the area!" a voice shouted, breaking through the chaos. I turned to see an emergency response team rushing in, their uniforms stark against the darkness. My breath stuttered in relief. But who had called them? The figure hesitated, retreating back into the remnant darkness. "Milo," it called softly again, but the call lost its grip. "Go! Go!" a leader barked, ushering the team as they fanned out, flashlights illuminating the corners of the vast plant. I felt tethered to that shadow, a part of me wanting to flee, yet something compelled me to stay. What if the others didn't understand? "Get him out of here!" a newcomer shouted in my direction. I felt a hand grip my arm, but I yanked free. "No, I need to understand. They're coming. We need to go now." Suddenly, a loud crashing noise echoed behind me, a sound of machines grinding and walls cracking. The ground beneath trembled harder, sending vibrations up my legs. The emergency team stepped back, fear creeping into their expressions. "Is it the reactor?" one of them asked, scanning the horizon of chaos unfolding around us. I turned, straining against my initial instinct to flee. Whatever was happening triggered a primal fear. But the thought of leaving that shadow behind, leaving my memories fractured and unexamined, held me in place. I had brushed against the edge of something crucial. Then I noticed it, a glint of metal reflected in the chaos. Something caught my attention, just outside the reach of the light, lying partially hidden beneath debris. I bent instinctively to retrieve it, heart panicking as the adrenaline coursed through me. As I reached for it, the lights flickered again, plunging us into darkness momentarily. I could feel a weight pressing down, something dark seeping into the space. When the lights returned, my heart sank. The shadow was gone, but the room felt charged with a lingering presence. I pulled my hand back. In my palm lay a small, rusted object covered in dirt. Squinting, I recognized it at last. A key, old and painted black. A new sense of dread washed over me. What did it unlock? And why did I feel that familiarity again? Every question raced through my mind as the alarms wailed, and amidst the chaos, I understood one thing. The shadows were not finished with me yet. I wanted answers, but I was no longer sure I was prepared for the truth. The lights buzzed overhead, casting long, flickering shadows across the debris-laden floor as I stood there with the key in my trembling hand. My pulse raced, and my mouth felt dry. I needed to focus. The emergency team's voices faded into a distant hum as my thoughts spiraled. That key had weight beyond its metal, like a tether to something I couldn't grasp. I felt the world around me pulsing with hidden meaning, and I hated it. The frantic energy of the alarms only heightened my anxiety. "Milo!" a voice called out again, startling me from my thoughts. It was one of the responders, a woman with wide eyes, peering over the wreckage. She motioned for me to join her. "We need to regroup." I took a tentative step toward her, but something held me back. What if the shadow returned? What if I lost this chance to understand? "Wait!" I shouted, scanning the area where the shadow had vanished. There was something here. I saw it. The voice. It called me by my name. She paused, a flicker of recognition passing over her face. "Do you know who it was?" I shook my head, fighting the dread creeping back in. "I don't know. I glanced at the key. "I have to find out. Right now we have bigger issues," she said, her urgency sharpening. "There's a breach in Sector 6. We think it might be linked to the reactor." "The reactor?" My mind raced back to the crashing noises, the vibrations. Those weren't just random events. "We have to go there," I replied, the words coming out more forcefully than I intended. "Are you out of your mind? After what you just experienced?" she retorted, disbelief etched on her features. "But what if that's where it leads? What if the shadow is linked to the breach?" The idea was reckless, but I felt a strong compulsion to follow that thread. Somehow, it felt like my truth and theirs were intertwined. She hesitated, glancing back at her team, who were busy attempting to communicate with the outside. "Fine, but you need to stay close to me. If anything happens, we get the hell out." I nodded, relief and fear battling it out in my chest. She motioned for me to follow as we made our way through the chaos of the plant, weaving between debris and fluorescent lights that flickered ominously. As we approached Sector 6, an unsettling silence enveloped us. The alarms had muted, and the air felt heavy, as if we'd crossed a threshold into something entirely different. "Stay alert," she said, her voice low. I peered into the dim corridor, every instinct screaming at me. Just then, a soft sound caught my attention. A whisper, familiar yet distant. "Milo, come." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. I turned to the responder, who stared straight ahead, her face pale. "Did you hear that?" Her eyes widened, and I barely caught her nod. Before we could react, the ground shook violently, sending us staggering back. "Get down!" I shouted, but it was too late. The corridor ahead erupted with sparks, and a massive metallic door slammed shut between us and whatever was beyond. "What the hell was that?" she exclaimed, trying to steady herself. I felt the weight of the key in my pocket. It sent a jolt of determination through me. I think it's time to use this." The distress on her face deepened. "You might not want to." But I was past the point of hesitating. I had come too close to answering questions that had haunted me. This was it. As I pulled the key back out, what I felt was more than fear. It was a desperate need to confront whatever laid in the shadows ahead. But just as I turned toward the impenetrable door, a low rumble echoed ominously, resonating through the ground like a warning. Something was waiting for us on the other side, and it felt like a secret I needed to uncover. I stepped closer to the door, my heart racing. The weight of the key was heavy in my hand. This was my chance. I had to know what lay behind that barrier. I glanced at the responder, who was now scanning the area, her anxiety palpable. "Are you really going to use that?" she asked, voice barely above a whisper. "Yes," I replied, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "I have to." Taking a deep breath, I inserted the key into the lock. It fit perfectly. With a soft click, the door trembled slightly, as if it was awakening from a long slumber. My fingers brushed against the cold metal, and an electric pulse shot through me. Her hand shot out to grab my arm. "Wait! We should think this through. We don't know what's behind there." I wanted to heed her warning, but that whisper just wouldn't leave my mind. It gripped me like a vice, urging me to move forward. I turned the key, and the lock clicked open. The door opened with a heavy groan. The darkness beyond seemed to breathe, exhaling a musty, metallic scent that sent alarms blaring in my head. I stepped inside, and the responder followed, though reluctantly. The moment we crossed the threshold, the lights flickered back to life, illuminating a vast room filled with strange machinery. Most of it lay in ruins, twisted and torn apart. Old screens flickered, displaying static and mangled data. It felt like entering a tomb, a grave site for whatever once thrived here. "What is this place?" the responder whispered, her voice trailing off as she took in the scene. "I don't know," I admitted, "but I think we're close to something." Suddenly, I noticed a console in the corner, still glowing faintly. As I moved closer, the images on the screens began to shift. They showed layers of schematics, with one marked in red, "Active breach detected." Panic washed over me. "Look at that," I said, pointing at the screen. "It's showing where the breach is located." "Do you think it leads to—" She trailed off, eyes wide with dread. Before I could respond, the lights flickered violently. I could hear the mechanical whirring beneath us, a heartbeat in the silence. The air grew thick with tension. And then I heard it again, the whisper, "Milo, come." My heart pounded harder. "Do you hear that?" I asked. She nodded, visibly shaken. "Yeah, it's there again." I turned my attention back to the screen. The last few frames froze, displaying unsettling images of shadowy forms darting around the breach area. It made my skin crawl. "What are those?" I whispered. Then the doors we had just crossed suddenly slammed shut behind us, locking us in. "What just happened?" she shouted, panic creeping into her voice. I rushed to the door, banging on it. No response. "We have to get out!" But as I turned back to the console, the screens flickered again. It displayed one last image, a distorted face, eyes wide, staring right at me. My breath caught in my throat. "I found something," I said, the unease washing over me again. "But now, I don't think we're alone." Suddenly, the lights blinked out, plunging us into darkness. The whisper grew louder, echoing through the void, calling my name again. "Milo, come." And then everything went still. I stood frozen in the dark, dread crawling up my spine. The whisper, now more insistent, twisted around me like a snake, filling the space with a sense of looming danger. "Milo, come." It beckoned me, and I felt my instincts clawing at the edges of my mind. "Stay calm, we need a plan," I said, though I could barely convince myself. My hands shook as I fumbled to find my flashlight from my belt. The beam sliced through the darkness, exposing crumbling machinery covered in dust. I looked over at the responder, her face pale and wide-eyed. "What do we do?" Her voice trembled. I took a breath, trying to piece together a strategy. We couldn't just stand there. "We need to find another exit. If there's a breach, we might have to find a source. Or whatever is causing this," she added, glancing around as if the shadows might leap out at us. The whisper faded momentarily, replaced by a low buzzing from the console. I stepped closer, the light flickering over the screens as they blinked back to life. Each image contained more chaos, systems failing, alarms ringing. and then another distorted face appeared. This one wasn't just watching, it looked like it was screaming. "What are they?" I muttered, my stomach churning. "Are they people?" she asked, edging closer to inspect the screen. "I think," my voice faltered, "I think we need to get those doors open." I turned back toward the door, pounding on it again. "Hello? Can anyone hear us?" My voice echoed back, mocking me. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on, revealing to me what I really feared. The room was not empty. Shadows lurked in the corners, pooling together like ink. I pointed the flashlight around, trying to focus on the deeper darkness. Sweat dripped from my brow. "I think something is in here with us," I whispered. "Like people? Or—" Before she could finish, the screens erupted with noise, a cacophony of static, and the whisper returned, different now, more urgent. "Milo, come now." "Run!" I shouted. I grabbed her hand and darted in the opposite direction of the console, heading toward a set of smaller doors I noticed when we first entered. I didn't know if there was an escape, but staying there felt like a death sentence. We stumbled through the wreckage, the air thick with dust and despair. It smelled like burnt metal and something sweet that made my stomach churn. "Where are we going?" she yelled over the cacophony, her grip tightening on my arm. "I don't know," I replied, desperately scanning the walls. "Just anywhere but here." We reached the smaller doors, and I tried to push them open. They were locked. I slammed my shoulder against them, but they wouldn't budge. "Help me!" She joined me, and we both threw our weight against the doors, but it felt as if the shadows were closing in, suffocating us. I could see the shapes moving now, darting closer through the flickering light. They looked like nothing I had ever seen before. Then, everything stopped again. The lights dimmed, flickering once before cutting out entirely. The only sound left was the faint, eerie whisper. "Milo." I couldn't let it engulf me. I would not become a part of whatever nightmare this was. Suddenly, a single beam of light cut through the blackness, illuminating a figure lurking in the shadows. That's when I saw it. The figure in the light was not what I expected. It was tall, featureless, as if it had no face at all. Just a smooth silhouette against the faint glow, standing unnaturally still. My heart raced, and I instinctively stepped back. "What is that?" she whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "I don't know," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady, but the tremor slipped through. The figure tilted its head, almost curiously. I could feel the air thicken around us, tightening like a noose. "Maybe we should—" she started, but I cut her off. "No, we can't stay here," I insisted, glancing around for another way out. The shadows were bubbling closer, swirling together like they were alive. I had to act. I directed the flashlight at the figure, and to my horror, it didn't even flinch. Instead, the beam passed through it, illuminating the wall behind. "What the hell?" I breathed, feeling the panic rise. "It's not real. It can't be real." But as to prove me wrong, the whisper returned, and this time it wasn't just a voice. It morphed into a chorus, a choir of anguished wails, echoing off the walls. "Milo, help us! Milo, come! Make it stop!" my partner shouted, hands over her ears. She looked at me with terror in her eyes. I couldn't focus on her fear. I had to find a way out. "No!" I yelled, trying to drown out the sound. "We need to break the door down." We both turned back to the smaller doors, throwing ourselves against it again. This time, I felt a crack under my shoulder as I pushed. I shoved harder, focusing on that small success. The door jolted, then shifted just a bit. "Again!" I grunted, and we slammed our bodies against the barrier. But the whispers grew louder, more frantic. "Milo!" In the corner of my eye, I caught movement. The figure in the light was now drifting closer, the shadows elongating around it like wisps of smoke. Just when I thought the doors would give, a loud bang echoed from the hallway, shaking the wall and making us stumble. "What was that?" she screamed, fear flooding her voice. The figure stopped in its tracks, as if sensing something. "I don't know, but we have to hurry," I urged, summoning every last ounce of strength. I pushed again, and the door finally gave way with a splintering crack. It swung open, revealing a dimly lit corridor beyond. "Go!" I shouted, dragging her through the doorway. The hallway was eerily quiet compared to the chaos behind us. I turned back to see the figure still standing in the shadows, as if watching us go. The whispers faded, but the chill of its gaze lingered. We rushed down the corridor, adrenaline surging. I had no idea where we were going, but I knew we had to keep moving. "What the hell was that thing?" she panted beside me. "I don't know," I replied, my mind racing, "but we need to find help, fast." As we rounded a corner, my flashlight flickered again, and I stumbled to a stop. In front of us was a massive door, one I recognized from the schematics of the plant. It was labeled Control Room. Before I could react, the door hissed open. A strange light spilled out, illuminating a room filled with consoles and screens. I felt a rush of hope mixed with dread. Then, before I could step inside, something shifted behind us, and I knew we weren't alone anymore. I turned slowly, dread swallowing the air around me. The shadows seemed to pulse, coiling thickly in the corridor, hissing in whispers. "Milo, come to us." "No," I snapped, shoving the noise from my mind. I dragged the responder closer, but I could feel the panic rising again. "We have to get in." "Where is everyone?" she asked, glancing nervously down the corridor. "Shouldn't there be a team here?"
I didn't have an answer, but the urgency was evident. We bolted into the control room, breathing hard. The moment we stepped inside, the atmosphere shifted. An ominous hum filled the air, a promise of something lurking just out of reach. Screens blinked to life, casting a ghostly glow over the panels. I grabbed the closest console, a random handful of buttons under my fingers, trying to make sense of it all. "I need the camera feeds. Show me the layout." "Wait," she shouted, grabbing my arm. "What are you doing? We don't know what will happen." "I need to understand," I pressed. "The breach, it has to lead somewhere." I punched in a command, and the room exploded with static as other screens flickered to life. Images of the plant flooded the monitors. Shadows flitted through the hallways, flickering just beyond the light's reach. "Look, there it is!" I pointed to one screen, my heart racing, watching the familiar dark figure slip past. The urgency in her eyes transformed to horror. "That's not right!" "Wait," I squinted, trying to discern what I was seeing. One image lingered, a clearer frame revealing a wall in the storage area I had just left. The figure hung there for a moment until it seemed to draw back. Then the alarms roared to life, the very ones we had nearly blocked out moments ago. "We have to find a way out," she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. "Just a minute." I gestured her to hold on, waiting for a freeze frame that could explain everything. I couldn't tear myself away from the screen displaying whatever truth the shadows were hiding. But in the corner of my eye, I saw movement. The doorway behind us, the one we had just entered through, spilled darkness into the control room. "Milo," the voice echoed again, deeper, more insistent. I turned instinctively toward the sound, instinct screaming at me to run, but my feet barely moved. The figure emerged from the shadows of the doorway, its face still featureless, smoother than any surface I had known. It stepped forward, beckoning to me with a slow, deliberate movement. "Come, Milo." "What are you?" The words escaped before I could stop myself. "Your past," it whispered, the tone woven with ancient threads of familiarity. My heart raced. "Milo, we have to go," she urged again, panic threading through her voice. But something deep inside me wanted to step closer, to reach out. I felt compelled, as if something from that dark void knew me. "Don't," she pleaded, breaking through my haze. "It's not real." But it felt real. Everything in that moment felt viscerally authentic. The echo of 1,000 memories streamed through my mind, as if the shadows were pulling on the very fabric of my existence. "I can't," I stammered. With one swift motion, she gripped my arm, yanking me backwards. The shadow paused, withdrawing slightly, a flicker of loss crossing its formless essence. Without thinking, I dashed toward the window.
Fueled by panic, flinging open another door, desperate to escape the echoing voice still calling for me, still entwined in my essence. We burst into another corridor filled with flickering lights. Behind us, I could still feel the presence lingering, lurking in the edges of my thoughts. "We need to find a way out," I yelled again, pounding on the nearest door. It wouldn't budge. Then, suddenly, the lights overhead began to blink furiously, the flickering revealing more shadows advancing from both directions. "Move!" I shouted, pushing ahead again. The sounds of chaos filled my ears, alarms vibrating through the air. Desperation fueled my movements. We sprinted to an emergency exit I had seen earlier. As I pulled the door open, I glanced back once more. The emerging figure lingered, seeming to fade, as if losing its power. But then the chorus began again, the whispers rising, louder now. "Milo, come back." My heart pounded, and I slammed the door, adrenaline surging through my veins as we emerged into daylight. The moment I stepped outside, the air felt liberating, yet the weight of the darkness still pressed against my spine. We collapsed against the metal railing, gasping for breath. The chaos of the plant receded behind us, but fear lingered in my gut like a specter. "We need to alert emergency services," she said, still catching her breath. But I shook my head, swallowing hard. No, it's still there. It won't let this end. Still, I started the trek toward safety, knowing that this wasn't over, the unanswered questions lingering, gnawing at the edge of my sanity. What was the shadow? What did it want? Answering those questions had turned into a battle I never intended to fight. Every step away from the plant felt almost like a betrayal, the truth buried deeper in shadows I could not yet grasp. I could feel those haunting echoes trail behind me. I may have escaped that night, but the weight of uncertainty lingered. The line between what was real and what was not, blurred by fear and the thought of what lay just beyond the darkness. Though I walked toward a new day, the past's whispers still followed me, still just out of reach, waiting for the moment I would inevitably confront them again.